Chapter 29. The Hero's Journey. The knowledge of the heart is in no book, and it is not to be found in the mouth of any teacher, but it grows out of you like the green seed from the dark earth. Levi and I would go inward all the way, and there we discovered the transmutation of lead into gold. Like a seed, we were planted where a great vine would grow, and so we went all the way into the nature of our soul. Not to sound grandiose, but any person who has this courage is their own hero. They are the ones who give up their attachments, and so they release and let go in order to grow. The whole idea of the hero's journey is about coming home to ourselves. It is our path as a community, and so it requires all of us throughout all planets, galaxies, and realms. This is not about an individual path, but rather it is about the all. Each person must walk it for themselves, but together all of us are called. Every hero ventures forth from the world of the common day into a region of supernatural wonder. Fabulous forces are there encountered, and a decisive victory is won. Then the hero comes back from this mysterious adventure with the power to bestow boons on the fellow man. Joseph Campbell summarizes this path of the hero's journey into 3 parts, or it could be thought of as 3 kingdoms, consisting of 17 stages. The 3 parts are: first, the departure; second, the initiation; and third, the return, which could also be thought of as the kingdom of the body, the kingdom of the mind, and the kingdom of the spirit. The effect of the successful adventure of the hero comes with the unlocking and release of the flow of life into the body of the world. This path of the hero's journey has been walked by Mother Teresa, Buddha, Jesus, Muhammad, and every prophet to have ever lived. It is not that all paths are exact or the same, but they touch the same type of mile markers upon the path before they find the goal where they arrive. And so through the 17 stages, the path begins with a call to adventure. This call may begin with a blunder, as what may be first thought of as misfortune, but a blunder may amount to an opening of destiny. Thus it happens in fairy tales of all kinds, and so we can imagine how a wound could inspire someone to discover the elixir of immortality. This is the first stage of the mythological journey, which is described as the call to adventure, and signifies that destiny has summoned a hero and transferred his or her spiritual center of gravity from within the pale of his or her society to a zone unknown. This fateful region of both treasure and danger may be variously represented as a distant land, a forest, a kingdom underground, beneath the waves, or above the sky, a secret island, a lofty mountaintop, or a profound dream state. But it is always a place of strangely fluid and polymorphous beings, unimaginable torments, superhuman deeds, and impossible delight. The hero's call to adventure may start with a mere mistake, a wound, or a passing phenomenon that catches the wandering eye and lures one away from the frequent path. Second is the refusal of this call. This refusal of the call converts the adventure into its negative. Walled in boredom or hard work, the subject loses the power of significant affirmative action and becomes a victim. It seems all one can do is create new problems and await the gradual approach of disintegration. There was even dread of Jesus' path, for he would not return. The myths and folklore make it clear that the refusal is a refusal to give up what one takes to be one's own interest. The future is regarded not in terms of an unremitting series of deaths and births, but as though one's present system of ideals, virtues, goals, and advantages were to be fixed and made secure. One is harnessed, both day and night, by the divine being that is the image of the living self within the locked labyrinth of one's own disoriented psyche. The way to the gates have all been lost. There is no exit. So one can cling, like Satan, furiously to oneself and be in hell, or else break, where the ego is annihilated at last as they come home to God. Willed introversion, in fact, is one of the classic implements of the creative genius and can be employed as a deliberate device. It drives the psychic energy into depth and activates the lost continent of unconscious infantile and archetypal images. The result may be disintegration of consciousness, more or less complete, which could appear as neurosis or psychosis, but on the other hand, if the personality is able to absorb and integrate the new forces, there will be an experience of almost superhuman degree of self-consciousness and masterful control. This is the basic principle of the Indian disciplines of yoga. The second stage is a deliberate, terrific refusal to respond to anything but the deepest, highest, richest answer. This is a kind of total strike or ejection of the offered terms of life. As a result, it begins to power the transformation, which carries the problem to a plane of new magnitudes where it can be resolved. The third stage is the supernatural aid for those who do not permanently refuse the call. Once the call is accepted, there is the first encounter on the hero's journey with a protective figure who provides the adventurer with amulets against the dark forces he or she is about to pass. Be this a wise old man, a fairy godmother, or a blessed virgin, the hero comes under the protection where they cannot be harmed. Such a figure represents the protecting power of destiny. The fantasy is a reassurance and a promise that the peace of paradise, which was known in the mother's womb, is not to be lost, that this vision supports the future as well as the past, the Alpha and the Omega, though the omnipotence may seem to be endangered by the threshold passes and life awakenings. One has to know and trust, then the ageless guardians will appear. Having responded to your own call, and continuing to follow courageously as the consequences unfold, as the hero finds, you will find all the forces of the unconscious at your side. Mother Nature herself supports the mighty task. The supernatural helper in fairy tale lore might be a wizard, a hermit, a goddess, or a shepherd who appears in the psyche to supply the amulets and advice that the hero will need. The higher mythologies develop their role in the great figure of the guide, the teacher, the ferryman, and the conductor of souls to the afterworld. The hero to whom such a helper appears is typically one who has responded to the call. The call, in fact, was the first announcement of the approach of the initiatory priest. This is all happening in the psyche, in the soul of one person. And so first we feel a call to adventure. We feel energies of the ego that make us want to refuse the call. And once we accept and begin the journey, it's as if a secret door opens where we find our inner guardian with supernatural aid. The fourth state is crossing the first threshold with the personification of your destiny. The guardian has the aid, and so the hero goes forward in the adventure until you come to the threshold guardian at the entrance to the zone of magnified power. Beyond this is the darkness, the unknown, and danger. The regions of the unknown, be it a desert, jungle, deep sea, alien land, or whatever, are free fields for the projection of the unconscious mind. We label them as lands and stories, or create them in movies or artwork. But again, these are interpretations of the inner psyche. And so the hero's physical world appears just as ordinary as it's always been. But this new inner land and its extravagant energies seem to be benign to those who pay respect, honor, and worship. Yet others can experience the same aspect in the mind as dread if the egoic nature of the mind demands to have its own way. This threshold presents challenges and established boundaries for the sake of growth so that the hero may gather the required lessons for the journey. The adventure is always a passage beyond the veil of the known into the unknown, and so the boundary between thresholds are dangerous, and to deal with them is risky, and so nothing less than an act of courage is called for. It could be thought of as a snake, which may be greatly feared, but the same snake could also know the pathways out of danger or disaster if respected, trusted, and gentleness is bestowed upon it. Such demons, which are filled with dangers, are also the bestowers of magic power, and every hero must encounter this threshold if they are to step an inch beyond the walls of their own traditional views. Our previous beliefs can limit us, as these limiting beliefs are symbols of the world to which the five senses glue us. When we are no longer protected by our name, physical character, and all the aspects of comfort and safety we cherish, we then find that our situations change. Through courage and bravery, we can release these aspects that bind us, where we can become freed and open. These comforts are the force of monsters of phenomenality which must be dispelled, and by the rendering of self-denying, we become aware of our divinity. When we embrace our divinity, which comes through breaking our limiting beliefs and patterns of the past that were given to us through family, land, and traditions, a spirit is entitled to receive offerings and grace. This allows the hero to transcend the name and form they identify with. This release from ego allows the spiritual aspect to pass through the walls of the threshold, where we depart from the ego and pass on. The fifth stage is the belly of the whale. The idea that the passage of the magical threshold is a transit into a sphere of rebirth is symbolized in worldwide womb image of the belly of the whale. The hero, instead of conquering the power of the threshold, is swallowed into the unknown and would appear to have died. This idea emphasizes that the passage of the threshold is a form of self-annihilation. Instead of passing outward, beyond the confines of the visible world, the hero goes inward to be born again. The disappearance corresponds to the passage of a worshipper into the temple, where they are associated with dust and ashes. The temple's interior, the belly of the whale, and the heavenly land beyond and below that confines the world are one and the same. That is why the approaches of the entrances to temples are surrounded by gargoyles, dragons, lions, devil slayers, and angels with swords. These are the threshold guardians, to ward away all incapable to encounter the higher silence within. The guardians could also be seen as two rows of teeth of the whale, or the dangerous aspect that one enters beyond. Stories of Jesus, Dionysus, and Osiris are recalled to be slain, dismembered, and crucified, while the hero whose attachment to the ego is annihilated, so spirit passes across the horizons of the world, and therein lies the power to save, for passing and returning, to demonstrate that through all contraries of impermanence there is nothing to fear. This brings the hero to the second part, or the second kingdom of initiation. Here on the sixth stage, we enter deep into the road of trials. Once having traversed the threshold, the hero moves in the dream landscape within the psyche of curiously fluid, ambiguous forms, where he or she must survive a succession of trials. We must pass miraculous tests and ordeals. The hero is aided by the advice, amulets, and secret agents of the supernatural helper whom we met before the entrance into the region. Or it may be that we discover for the first time that there is a benign power everywhere supporting us in this superhuman passage. Just when we think there is no way out, the way appears. Just when we seem to be filled by the darkness, the pinprick of light opens. Just when we can't imagine how we'll survive, we find a certain miracle that reminds us how the soul will not perish or die. The psyche's voyage to the underworld is but one of the innumerable such adventures undertaken by the heroes of fairy tales and myths. An observer to a shaman reported, the shaman has to encounter and master a number of different obstacles which are not always easy to overcome. Although they wander through the dark forests and over massive ranges of mountains, where the shaman occasionally comes across the bones of other shamans and their animal mounts who have died along the way, they reach an opening into the ground. The most difficult stage of the adventure now begins, a descent into the depths of the underworld with its remarkable manifestations that opens before them. After the shaman appeases the watchers of the King of the Dead and makes their way past the numerous perils, they come at last to the Lord of the Underworld, and later rushes against him or her, horribly bellowing. But if the human is sufficiently skilled, they can sway the monster back again, with promises of luxurious offerings. This moment of dialogue with the monster is the crisis of the ceremonial. Then the shaman passes into ecstasy, as Joseph Campbell famously stated, "Wherever you stumble, there lies your treasure." And so it happens that for anyone on the hero's journey, in whatever society, understands the perilous journey into the darkness by descending, either intentionally or unintentionally, into their own spiritual labyrinth of the psyche, where they will soon find a landscape of symbolic figures which is no less marvelous than sacred mountains. In the vocabulary of the mystics, this is the second stage of the way, that of the purification of the self, when the senses are cleansed and humbled, and the energies and interests are able to concentrate upon transcendental things. This is a processing of dissolving, transcending, or transmuting the infantile images of our personal past, and even our dreams guide us with instructions or situations which are encouraged nightly. In dream forms, we may see what is reflected as a whole picture of our present case, but also a clue to what we must do to be saved. The original departure into the land of trials represents only the beginning of the long and perilous path of initiatory conquests and moments of illumination. Dragons have to be slain, and barriers must be passed again and again and again. Meanwhile, there will be a multitude of preliminary victories, unretainable ecstasies, and momentary glimpses of wonderful land. The seventh stage is the meeting with the goddess, or we could imagine that if the hero is feminine, it would be a meeting with the god. This ultimate adventure, when the barriers and ogres have been overcome, is commonly represented as a mystical marriage of the triumphant hero soul with the queen goddess of the world. This is the crisis at the zenith, or at the edge of the earth, at the central point of the cosmos, in the tabernacle of the temple, or within the darkness of the deepest chamber of the earth. In the Tanti Cooks of the medieval and modern India, the abode of the goddess is called the Island of Jewels. Her throne is there, in a grove of wish-fulfilling trees. The beaches of the isle are the golden sands, and there the kingdom overlooks the still waters of the ocean of the nectar of immortality. The goddess is red with fire of life, the earth, the solar system, the galaxies of the far-extending space, which all swell within her womb. For she is the creatrix of the world, ever mother, ever virgin. She encompasses the encompassing, nourishes the nourishing, and is the life of everything that lives. She is also the death of everything that dies. The whole round of existence is accomplished within her sway, from birth through adolescence, maturity, and senescence to the grave. She is the womb and the tomb. Thus she unites the good and the bad, exhibiting the two models of the remembered mother, not only as the personal, but as the universal. The devotee is expected to contemplate the two with equal equanimity. Through this exercise, the hero spirit is purged of its infantile, inappropriate sentimentalities and resentments, and the mind is opened to the inscrutable presence which exists, not as good and bad with respect to the childlike human convenience, but as the law and image of the nature of being. Once the great saint Ramakrishna beheld a beautiful woman ascending from the Ganges and approached the grove in which he was meditating. He perceived that this woman was about to give birth to a child. In a moment, the baby was born, and she gently nursed it. However, then she assumed a horrible aspect, took the infant into her now ugly jaws and crushed it, chewed it, and swallowed it, then returned to the Ganges, where the woman disappeared. Only geniuses capable of the highest realization can support the full revelation of the sublimity of this goddess. The goddess represents the totality of that which can be known, life and death. The meeting with the goddess, who is incarnate in every woman, is the final test of the hero, to which the boon of love, which is life itself, is enjoyed as the encasement of eternity. And when the adventurer, in this context, is not a youth, but a maid or page, she and he is the one who, by his or her qualities, her beauty, or her or his yearning, is fit to become the consort of an immortal. Then the heavenly husband or bride is sent down to him or her and conducts them into bed. The 8th stage would be called a temptress if a woman, or a tempter in a man. As these are all stages, depending on the person's karma and psyche and the passage one takes, some of these stages may be mere glimpses as the hero passes onward. For instance, someone who has unfinished or unsatisfied desires may be pulled into the stage of meeting a woman as a temptress, whereas others may spot her in a crowd, understand that she is a temptress, and continue on the path. These are all tests of the hero, where we are visiting the aspects within ourselves that we must conquer and navigate through. Where a monk or nun would be trained not to give in to temptation, a common person may struggle with desires, and so upon this journey, there may appear an ultimate test of the lustful temptress that is there to lure them away from the path. And so in order for the hero to move forward, this test must be passed. The 9th stage is the atonement with the father, and again, if the hero is feminine, this would be atonement with the mother. In essence, it is atonement with the same-sex parental figure. In this step, the hero must confront and be initiated by whatever holds the ultimate power in their life. In many myths and stories, this is the father or mother figure who has life and death power. This is the center point of the journey. All the previous steps have been moving into this place, and all that follow will move out from it. Atonement consists in no other than the abandonment of that self-generated double monster, the dragon thought to be God, and the dragon thought to be sin. But this requires an abandonment of the attachment to ego itself, and that is what is difficult. One must have faith that the Father is merciful, and then find reliance on that mercy. It is in this ordeal that the hero may derive hope and assurance from that helpful female figure, by whose magic they are protected through all the frightening experiences by the Father's ego-shattering initiation. One endures the crisis, only to find that in the end, the father and mother reflect each other, and are in essence the same. The problem of the hero going to meet the Father is to open the soul beyond terror to such a degree that he will be ripe to understand how the sickening and insane tragedies of the vast and ruthless cosmos are completely validated in the majesty of being. The hero transcends life with its particular blind spot, and for a moment rises a glimpse of the source. They behold the face of the Father, and the two are atoned. The next stage is apotheosis, which is in essence a reclaiming of divinity. Like the Buddha himself, this godlike being is a pattern of the divine state to which the human hero attains who has gone beyond the last terrors of ignorance. This is the point of realization in which a greater understanding is achieved. Armed with this new knowledge and perception, the hero is resolved and ready for a more difficult part of the adventure. Those who know not only that the everlasting lies in them, but that what they are, and all things, really is everlasting. Dwell in the groves of the wish-fulfilling trees, drink the brew of immortality, and listen everywhere to the unheard music of eternal concord. When the veil around consciousness has been annihilated, then the hero becomes free from all fear. Beyond the reach of change, this is the release of potential within all of us, which anyone can attain. And so this is the discovery of God's life force living within all things. The world is filled and illuminated by this source, but rather we do not hold it. It holds us. In the same way we are a lotus, the way the ground holds the seed so that we can bloom. And so we may reflect on a word called Bodhisattva, the one who has taken the vow to protect and illuminate all sentient beings and dispel the suffering of this world. This is apotheosis. We see ourselves in all things, and so we do not act according to our own desires, but rather our desire is to relieve the suffering of all those around us. It is the essence of selflessness. Whereas before we saw human and animal, time and eternity, nirvana and samsara, heaven and hell, yin and yang, we now realize that nothing is separate and it is all part of the One, or God. We recognize how in all the feminine there is the masculine, and in all the masculine there is the feminine. This is the power of creation. The 11th stage is the ultimate boon. The ultimate boon is the achievement of the goal of the quest. It is what the hero went on the journey to achieve and find. All the previous steps serve to prepare and purify the hero for this step, since it is found in many myths that the boon is something transcendent, like the elixir of life, or a plant that supplies immortality, or the Holy Grail and the Great Work. The ease with which the hero is here accomplished signifies that the hero is the superior man and woman, a true king and queen. An image of this indestructibility is represented in the folk idea of the spiritual double, second heart, or an external soul not afflicted by the loss and injuries of the present body, but existing safely in some place removed. This indestructible body goes beyond death of the material world, and in essence is the ultimate boon, or the elixir of life. In many Eastern religions and paths, the spiritual double would be seen in statues through the world as Brahma, Vishnu, Shiva, Buddha, Tara, or the god or goddess in his and her many forms. The individual ego must know that they are not this divinity, but rather the divinity is energy, which is the power of the spiritual soul. Again, this is not an individual, but rather the source from which the lotus grows. This could represent the moment that an individual discovers that Christ has been born in their heart, or when they discover the ultimate grace of the Virgin Mary. This discovery is the realization that the power of God is within, and now we have a new outlook to craft the rest of our life story. It is not so much as we ourselves are gods and goddesses, but rather that God energy lives within us, and so we may bring statues, banners, tankas, pictures, or posters into our homes so that these great beings can remind us of the soul within us. This is what we mean by a spiritual double. It is the peak of what we embody. As we walk forward in the ordinary world, we may forget this truth day to day, but there within the eye of every living thing is the spark of creation we know as godly. The gods and goddesses, then, are to be understood as embodiments and guardians of the elixir of imperishable being, but not themselves the ultimate in its primary state. What the hero seeks through this intercourse with them is not themselves, but God's grace, which is the power of the sustaining substance. This miraculous energy is the imperishable and ultimate boon. The agony of breaking through the personal limitations is the agony of spiritual growth. Art, literature, myth, religion, philosophy, yoga, and aesthetic disciplines are instruments or methods to help the individual pass the limiting horizons into the sphere of ever-expanding realization. As a hero crosses threshold after threshold, conquering dragon after dragon, the nature of the divinity that is summoned to their highest wish increases until it subsumes the cosmos. Finally, the mind breaks the bounding sphere of the cosmos to a realization transcending all experiences of form, all symbolizations, all divinities, and this is a realization of the unavoidable void. So it is when Dante had taken the last step in his spiritual adventure and came before the ultimate symbolic vision of the Trinity of God in the celestial rose. He had still one more illumination to experience, to go even beyond the forms of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. This would be seen as the Buddha's victory beneath the Bodhi tree. With the sword of his mind, he pierced the bubble of the universe and shattered it into nothing. The whole world of the natural experience, as well as the continents, heavens, and hells of traditional religious beliefs exploded. But the miracle of miracles was that though it all exploded, all was nevertheless renewed, revivified, and made glorious with the radiance of true being. Indeed, the gods of the redeemed heavens raised their voices in harmonious acclaim of the hero who had penetrated beyond them to the void that is their life and source. After this comes the third part, or the third kingdom, which is the return. Here includes the 12th through the 17 stages, which are in order: the refusal of the return, the magic flight, the rescue from without, the crossing of the return threshold, the master of the two worlds, and the freedom to live. These could be discussed as it occurs in any hero story.